met with the special counsel to make their case for not indicting him. With us now to talk more about all of this, NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley outside that federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., where the grand jury is meeting. Katie Benner, a Justice Department reporter for the New York Times and an MSNBC contributor. And Charles Coleman, civil rights lawyer and former prosecutor, who is also an MSNBC legal analyst. So, Ryan, you're at the courthouse. What's going on there as of right now?
Well, we know that the grand jury is meeting today, and you might see behind me that there's some vehicles here from the Federal Protective Services, which is a little bit of a change from what we've seen previously. Typically, this is an area where we have court staff members park. A little bit of a change, a little bit of an increase in security here. But, you know, this all comes, I think, most critically, not only after that target letter that Donald Trump received, but after this critical meeting between the Justice Department and his lawyers, after which, you know, in the last case, at least, in the case of the documents case in Mar-a-Lago, we saw an indictment shortly thereafter. It's all sort of building to this moment. The grand jury typically meets Tuesdays and Thursdays, so if they don't return an indictment today, probably would expect them to meet again on Thursday. That is, unless there's some sort of special session held in the meantime. But, you know, this jury has been really doing a lot of work over the past several months to hear testimony from a wide variety of people, including some of those fake electors from certain states who were put forward and said that Donald Trump won states that he actually lost, all the way up to former Vice President Mike Pence, who in the back of a black SUV that was pulled into the basement here, testified before the grand jury a couple of months ago. That was in the middle of the Proud Boys trial. You know, at the end of this month, we're going to see the sentencing in that Proud Boys seditious conspiracy case. So that sort of gives you a sense of, as these cases sort of churn along, how this grand jury has continued to look at all of this evidence over the course of several months.
And so, Ryan, how will things play out once the grand jury makes a decision on this specific case?
So typically what would happen, we don't know whether or not this will be under seal initially or whether it will just be sort of filed in open court. But typically what will happen is the jury foreperson, along with a prosecutor, will go to a judge, typically the on-duty federal magistrate judge, which actually, as it so happens, just switched today, given that we are in a new month of August. So typically that would happen sometime in the afternoon. You know, last Thursday, when we were all sort of expecting activity here, when in reality the activity ended up being much further south in Florida, we got a little bit of a hint that there are going to be no indictments returned on that Thursday. So we could have some sense in the afternoon, but a lot of this is up in the air because they don't necessarily have to warn the courtroom deputy that there's going to be something coming in. There's sort of a time frame which they're supposed to be in court for. So we could see something later this afternoon. We could see something Thursday, but really we're just keeping our eye out for what's going to happen next.
So, Katie, it's been that 2 weeks since Trump revealed that he had received that letter saying that he was indeed a target of the investigation. We haven't heard from anybody at the DOJ. Should we expect to hear from the Justice Department after an indictment is handed up, if it is?
I think that the Justice Department likes to speak through its court filings. So any of the accusations that it levies against Donald Trump, anything that it says that he's done, will probably come in the form of that indictment. They've been it's been interesting to watch. The Justice Department, with regards to Donald Trump, has used speaking indictments, has used its court documents to tell very full narratives about what it is they believe that the president has likely done that violated the law. We saw that in the documents case, and I would expect to see an equally fulsome indictment in this matter should the former president be indicted. And then when it comes to public remarks, keep in mind before, and I think that we would see this playbook unfold again, it was not Attorney General Merrick Garland who came out and spoke. It was Jack Smith who gave extremely brief remarks. We could see that again, but this is a place where the Justice Department is treading extremely carefully. They are taking an inherently political matter, the prosecution of a former president. It's hard to take the politics out of that, but trying as hard as it possibly can. And that includes not having, President Biden's handpicked Attorney General, Merrick Garland, come out and speak.
And Charles, Judge Michael Luttig, who advised former Vice President Pence on what he could do on January 6th, made this point on the podcast prosecuting Donald Trump about an indictment against Trump himself in connection with the January 6th attack. Listen to this.
This indictment for January 6th, if it does come, would never have come except for the fact that the former president wanted to be indicted for his role on January 6th. He stared and taunted and provoked first the Department of Justice, and then after Jack Smith was appointed special counsel, Jack Smith, to indict him.
So, and Charles, if Trump were also to be indicted in connection with the attack, which case would have the most serious legal consequences, you think?
Well, Jose, I do think that starting off, we have to consider that Mar-a-Lago is the most serious case right now because it's the only case he's been indicted for. Now, at the point that he becomes indicted federally for something else, that is a different conversation because depending on what the charges are, if you're talking about a seditious conspiracy charge, which we don't know at this point, based off of the target letter, there were a certain number of charges that were listed there. But ultimately, only Jack Smith knows if and for what the former president will be indicted. If you have a serious charge like that, it could potentially keep Donald Trump from holding public office again. That's a very serious thing. And so you have to take that into consideration. Now, what I will say is that absent from the conversation that we've had thus far is the notion of Fani Willis and what's going on in Fulton County in Georgia. What I will say is that if she moves forward with an indictment, he should be particularly concerned about that if he is named as a defendant there, because Donald Trump still has a very slim, albeit still viable, means of trying to pardon himself should he win the election in 2024 next year, or should he be able to convince whoever is the winner, if it is a Republican, to pardon him. We've had several people from that field say they would consider pardoning him if they were to win that election. And so on the federal level, he still has a potential out. But on the state level with Fani Willis, if he is indicted and then later convicted, that same out does not exist. So I do think that that becomes dicey in terms of asking the question, which of these cases is the most serious and which he should be most concerned about.
Yeah, and Charles, I'm glad you bring this up, and you point out that Fulton County District Attorney Willis is nearing the end of her probe into efforts to overturn the results of the election in Georgia. She insists there's no coordination or cooperation between her and Special Counsel Smith's investigation, telling a Georgia radio station, quote, "I don't know what Jack Smith is doing, and Jack Smith doesn't know what I'm doing." Is it unusual, Charles, that there is no cooperation or coordination between these two offices?
No, it's not unusual at all, Jose. It's a question that people have been asking for a while. And I've said, while it's not impossible, I will say that overall it is not likely. Fani Willis is going to continue on the track that she's doing as a state level prosecutor in Georgia and Fulton County. And Jack Smith is obviously going to continue the job he's doing as the special counsel for the Department of Justice. These two things are not necessarily going to intersect, although ultimately what will become a very interesting conversation, and it's not one to be held between Jack Smith and Fani Willis, but it is going to sort of be impacted by what either of them does, is what the schedule looks like going forward for Donald Trump in terms of when his court cases are moved and how those dockets actually take shape and take form. I suspect that Donald Trump's attorneys are going to try to use the May 20th, 2024 date that was set by Judge Eileen Cannon in South Florida as the benchmark for every other case. And even if he is indicted in Fulton County and as well as New York, what his defense attorneys are likely going to try to do is allow those cases or plead for those cases to essentially track the federal case that has been filed first with respect to Mar-a-Lago. That would not be unusual, but it would be a huge win for him as a defendant because he would then be pushing everything as far down the road as he can possibly do at this point.
And Katie, I mean, it's not unusual. Charles is letting us know that there is no coordination or cooperation. But do you think that this is something that is, which of the two are, in a sense, more dangerous for the former president?
I mean, I don't think that we could really answer that question because we don't know several factors, including how the former president would respond to either of the charges, how he would behave in court, what evidence he would be able to marshal, and whether or not jurors would find the prosecutor's arguments convincing in either case. So it's kind of an impossible question, and it's sort of it's a question that implies that people want to do damage to the former president, which I understand there are people out there who want to do that, but it's kind of an impossible question to answer. I think the better way to look at it is how is this going to impact his campaign if we want to ask that kind of political question. Currently, it's sort of buoying his campaign. Republicans are rallying around him. But how will the American people respond to a candidate that potentially has been indicted multiple times and will spend a great deal of time on the campaign trail also in a courtroom. I mean, there's a way in which right now it's helping him, but his opponents, especially in the primaries, could have time and airtime that he might not have because he will be tied up with a lot of legal issues.
A much better answer to a much better question, Katie. Thank you very much. Ryan Riley, Katie Benner, and Charles Coleman, I thank you for being with us this morning. Still ahead, what we know about an American woman and her daughter who have been kidnapped in Haiti. Plus, the man who police say drove into a group of farm workers outside of Walmart in North Carolina has turned himself in. What he says happened when we come back in 60 seconds. You're watching Jose Diaz Balart Reports on MSNBC.
It takes special dedication to care for our elderly, especially when they need it most.
At Visiting Angels, we help seniors remain independent and safe in their own home.
And give families that special peace of mind, knowing that their loved ones have the best care possible.
America's seniors need our helping hand. So if you care about caring, come on and join our team.
Visiting Angels, America's choice in home care.
Thirteen past the hour this afternoon, the man suspected of being the Gilco Beach serial killer on Long Island, New York, is set to make his first court appearance since his arraignment. Rex Heuermann, a New York architect, was charged with 3 counts of murder in the first and second degree last month. He has pleaded not guilty in the murders of 3 women. He is also considered a prime suspect in a 4th woman's murder, but has not been charged in that case. In total, police are investigating 11 sets of human remains that were found along a stretch of highway on Long Island near Gilco Beach. And now to an update on a story we first brought you yesterday. In North Carolina, a man accused of driving his car, and there you see the video, is driving his car into 6 migrant workers outside of Walmart in Lincolnton, has turned himself in to authorities. Police say 68-year-old Daniel Gonzalez told them he accidentally hit the gas while parking and fled in a panic. NBC's Guad Venegas joins us with more. Guad, good morning. Police originally said they believed it was an intentional assault.
They did, Jose, because of the video that we had yesterday, and it's important to report that now we have a suspect that turned himself in. Yesterday when we first learned about this attack that had happened over the weekend, we spoke to some of the workers. Our Telemundo affiliate was in town, and the workers were scared. These are farm workers that come into the country on a visa. They work 6 days a week, and usually their Sundays, Jose, are the days that they go into town to do shopping. These workers had gone to Walmart, and they were waiting to get on that bus. So initially, the information we received said that it appeared that it could have been intentional. But the authorities were very careful not to communicate any cause. So they said they were still investigating, right? So now we understand that the suspect, after the accident, went and spoke to his family, told them what happened. Then his family contacted the authorities and told them it was an accident. We now know, he says, he stepped on the gas instead of the brakes. And again, it's important to communicate the news because a lot of the workers who went to work yesterday and said they were scared will now have a different way to look at the situation, understanding that someone says this was a mistake.
And they were relatively minor injuries in most of those cases.
As of now, 6 people were struck and injured. All have been released from the hospital and are expected to recover. The injuries are, for example, one man had a broken ankle. Another man had injuries to his hand. These are the ones that we spoke to. So, yes, these are injuries they will recover from. Now, very important, these are farm workers, Jose, that have to work 6 days a week and might not be making the money they'd be making because they have to take a week or 2 off. And the Mexican consulate did tell us that they have financial and legal help for them